The police shot my honors student brother for driving his birthday car. So I used their racist text messages and security footage to win a $20 million lawsuit and get the officer 25 years in prison. The rhythm of our Harlem apartment was a symphony of love and struggle conducted by our parents' unwavering hands. I, Marcus Johnson, was 17, old enough to understand the weight of my father's security uniform and the tired pride in my mother's eyes when she returned from her nursing shifts. My brother, Elijah, was 8, a bright-eyed boy whose laughter could cut through the thickest New York gloom. He saw our 5-story walk-up not as a struggle, but as a castle, with me as his chief knight and our parents as the wise king and queen. Our sanctuary wasn't in the peeling paint or the noisy pipes. It was in the space between us, in the Sunday morning pancake rituals and the way our father would quiz Elijah on his multiplication tables at the dinner table. I remember the last normal night. Elijah was struggling with a book report on Langston Hughes. Our mother, Lena, sat with him at the small kitchen table, her voice a patient melody as she helped him sound out the words. "Life for me ain't been no crystal stair," she read, her finger tracing the line. "But all the time I's been a climbin' on." Our father, David, stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders, his gaze meeting mine across the room. In that look, I saw a lifetime of hopes, for me, for Elijah, for a future where the climb would be a little easier for us both. That was the foundation, a love so solid, so fierce, we believed it could withstand anything. The call came at 3:17 a.m. A police officer's voice, flat and impersonal, said there had been an accident on the Cross Bronx Expressway. A multi-car pileup in the rain. My parents were gone. Just like that. The symphony stopped, replaced by a silence so profound it felt like the world had ended. At the funeral, I held Elijah's trembling hand, his small body pressed against my side. He looked up at me, his eyes, pools of confusion and terror, and asked, "Marcus, who's going to read with me now?" In that moment, the 17-year-old boy I was died, and a guardian was born. I made a vow to him, to my parents, to God himself. "I will, Eli. I always will. I've got you." The years that followed were a blur of survival. I graduated high school a semester early, working days as a stock boy and nights studying for my GED so I could enroll in community college. Our apartment became a fortress of routine and responsibility. I learned to cook, to budget, to help with homework that was often beyond my own education. Elijah was my purpose, my shadow. He was brilliant. His teachers said he had a mind for engineering, for building things. I nurtured that, buying him model kits and science books, determined that the ceiling of our walk-up would not be the ceiling of his dreams. When I got into City College, I brought Elijah with me to the library, letting him do his homework beside me as I pored over case law. The dream was no longer just to survive, but to thrive, to become a lawyer, to build a life where Elijah would never know the kind of lack we had endured. I saw the way the world looked at us, two young black boys navigating a system designed to overlook us. I learned to speak with a certain tone, to dress with a certain care, to make myself non-threatening, respectable. I taught Elijah the same lessons our father had begun to teach him. Keep your hands visible. Be polite, no matter what. Come home safe. They were the rules of a war we hadn't enlisted in, a burden no child should have to carry. When I passed the bar on my first try, it felt like a victory for all of us. For me, for Elijah, for our parents. I took a job with a civil rights firm, my passion fueled by the injustices I saw in our community. And Elijah, my brilliant Elijah, graduated high school as valedictorian with a full scholarship to Columbia University for engineering. On his 18th birthday, I cashed in every savings bond, drained a special account I'd kept secret for years, and bought him a brand new midnight blue Mercedes C-Class. It wasn't just a car, it was a monument, a testament to every missed party, every late night, every sacrifice. It was me saying, "We made it, Eli. The climb was worth it." The look on his face when I led him to the curb, his eyes wide with disbelief, then exploding with joy, is a memory I will cherish forever. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. For me? Marcus, this is too much. Nothing is too much for you, little brother, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You earned this. Now go show your friends. But drive safe, you hear? He nodded, beaming, and slid into the driver's seat. I'm just going to Jamal's in Riverdale. I'll be back by 10. Love you, Marcus. Love you more, Eli, I called after him as he pulled away from the curb, the new car purring. I stood there, watching his taillights disappear, filled with a sense of completion, of profound peace. The foundation we had built from rubble seemed unshakable. I had no idea that in that moment, the ground was already cracking beneath our feet. Elijah's route to his friend Jamal's house in Riverdale took him through a predominantly white, affluent neighborhood. He was driving carefully, the radio playing a low, upbeat tune, still marveling at the feel of the leather steering wheel. He never noticed the unmarked police sedan that fell in behind him 2 blocks after he entered the neighborhood. Officer Richard Rick Kowalski had been on the force for 15 years. In his mind, he was a hunter, and his beat was his preserve. A young black man in a brand-new luxury car in this neighborhood didn't fit his profile of legitimacy. It was a predator's instinct, a bias so deeply ingrained, he called it a hunch. He ran the plates, which came back clean, registered to me, Marcus Johnson. This didn't assuage his suspicion, it deepened it. How could a black man from Harlem afford this? It had to be stolen or used for drug running. He decided to follow, waiting for a pretext, a minor traffic violation, a rolled stop sign, a slightly speeding. Elijah, nervous and hyper-aware of the police car behind him, drove with meticulous care. He signaled every turn, came to complete stops, kept his speed exactly at the limit. This, to Kowalski, was suspicious in itself, the overcaution of a guilty man. He never turned on his siren or lights. This was a stalk, not a traffic stop. When Elijah pulled into Jamal's driveway in a quiet, tree-lined cul-de-sac, he felt a wave of relief. He was here. He turned off the engine and was about to text Jamal that he had arrived when his driver's side door was wrenched open. "Out of the car! Now! Hands where I can see them!" Kowalski barked, his service weapon already drawn and pointed at Elijah's chest. Elijah's heart hammered against his ribs. He was frozen, terrified. "What? What did I do, sir?" I said, "Get out. Put your hands on the roof of the vehicle." Shaking, Elijah complied. Kowalski patted him down roughly. "Where'd you steal this from, boy?" he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can just roll through my neighborhood in a car like this? Who do you work for?" The line in the sand was the word, the one that has been used to strip dignity for centuries. "It's not stolen," Elijah said, his voice trembling but firm. "He was my brother, and he had been taught to know his rights. My brother bought it for me. It's my birthday present. The registration is in the glove box. You can check." "Your brother?" Kowalski laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "A nigger like you has a brother who can afford a Benz? You're a liar. You're a thief. I'm placing you under arrest." The outrage that filled me was a physical force, a nuclear reactor melting down in my soul. I looked at my brother, fighting for the life I had worked so hard to build for him, and I saw the smiling boy from just hours before. I saw Kowalski's sneering face in my mind. I saw the entire system that enabled him. The grieving brother was consumed. In his place stood the lawyer, the strategist, the avenger. This was no longer a tragedy, it was a crime, and I was going to prove it. My first act was not in a courtroom, but on the steps of the hospital. Cameras flashed as I stood, my back straight, my voice not trembling with grief, but shaking with controlled fury. My brother, Elijah Johnson, is not a thief. He is a valedictorian, a Columbia University scholarship student, and a beloved son and brother. He was driving a car that I, his brother and legal guardian, purchased for him as a birthday gift. He was shot by a police officer for the crime of being a young black man in a nice car. The police department is lying to you. I have the proof, and I will not rest until the man who did this is held accountable, and the system that protects him is forced to change. It was a declaration of war. The department immediately went on the offensive. They leaked anonymous details to friendly media outlets, suggesting I was a radical lawyer and that Elijah had a juvenile record, a complete fabrication. They pressured witnesses, including Jamal's family, implying their immigration status could be reviewed. The police union held a press conference, portraying Kowalski as a hero and vilifying me, but I was no longer just Marcus Johnson, grieving brother. I was a weapon. My strategy was multifaceted and relentless. Prong 1, the paper trail. I assembled every single document: the bill of sale for the Mercedes, the bank transfer, the registration in my name, the insurance documents. I obtained Elijah's pristine academic record, his scholarship letter from Columbia, and a dozen affidavits from teachers, neighbors, and community leaders attesting to his character. This was to dismantle the stolen car and dangerous criminal narrative. Prong 2, the digital evidence. I knew the power of video. I canvassed the entire neighborhood. I found a home security camera from a house across the street that had captured the entire incident, albeit without audio. It clearly showed Kowalski never activating his lights or siren, showed Elijah complying with orders, and showed the officer firing without any visible provocation or reaching from Elijah. I also subpoenaed Kowalski's personnel file. It was a treasure trove of corruption. There were 3 prior settled lawsuits for excessive force, all against young men of color. There were dozens of community complaints about racial profiling, all dismissed by internal affairs. There were text messages from his personal phone, discovered through a separate warrant, where he used racial slurs and bragged about cleaning the trash out of certain neighborhoods. Prong 3, the legal onslaught. I didn't just sue Officer Kowalski. I sued the entire police department and the city for negligent hiring, supervision, and for maintaining a culture of racism and impunity that enabled this shooting. I filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. I reached out to the Department of Justice, presenting my evidence and demanding a pattern or practice investigation into the NYPD. Prong 4, the public relations war. I worked with civil rights organizations and sympathetic journalists to control the narrative. We released the video to the media. We held rallies. We made Justice for Elijah a national hashtag. We turned the spotlight on the department's corruption so brightly they couldn't hide. The gathering of allies was critical. My firm stood behind me. The senior partner, a grizzled civil rights legend named Benjamin Carter, became my mentor in this fight. "They're counting on you to get tired, Marcus," he told me. "They're counting on you to run out of money or hope. We cannot let them." For months, we worked day and night. While Elijah endured multiple surgeries and agonizing physical therapy, I built the case. I deposed Kowalski, and under oath, his story fell apart. He couldn't explain the lack of a siren. He couldn't explain why he never called for backup. He couldn't explain the racist texts. He was a bully in a uniform, and in the cold, sterile light of a deposition room, his facade crumbled. The trial was a media circus. The city's high-priced lawyers tried to paint me as an emotionally compromised brother, not a credible attorney. They tried to portray Elijah's defiance as aggression, but we had the evidence. We presented it like a symphony of truth, each piece building on the last. The climax came when I cross-examined Officer Kowalski. I stood before him, not just as a lawyer, but as the embodiment of every life he had ever damaged. "Officer Kowalski," I began, my voice calm. "You stated you believed the Mercedes was stolen, correct?" "Yes. Even though the plates came back clean, registered to Marcus Johnson, I believed the registration was forged." "Based on what?" "Your extensive training in document forgery?" "I did it based on my experience." "Your experience," I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. I then displayed his text messages on the large screen in the courtroom. The gasps were audible. "Is this your experience? Text messages where you refer to black teenagers as thugs and animals?" His lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. The dam was breaking. I played the security video. "You see here, officer, my brother is complying. His hands are on the roof of the car. Where is the weapon you claimed he reached for?" "He made a furtive movement." "A furtive movement," I said, my voice dripping with scorn. "The catch-all excuse for shooting an unarmed man. You never turned on your siren. You never called for backup. You saw a young black man in a car you didn't think he deserved, and you decided to be judge, jury, and executioner. You didn't see a person. You saw a stereotype, and you shot him for it." I turned to the jury. "This isn't just about one bad cop. This is about a system that empowers him, a system that ignores complaints, that settles lawsuits with taxpayer money and admits no wrongdoing. A system that teaches its officers to see black skin as a threat. Elijah Johnson wasn't just shot by a bullet, he was shot by centuries of prejudice, institutionalized and handed a badge. The jury was out for less than 6 hours. The verdict was a resounding historic victory. They found the city and the police department liable on all counts. The judge awarded Elijah $17 million for the physical harm, the permanent damage to his lung, the shattered collarbone, the years of pain and limited mobility. He awarded a further $3 million for the profound mental and emotional trauma, for the night terrors, for the fear that would now be his constant companion. But the true reckoning was in the courtroom that day. The judge, citing the overwhelming evidence of corruption and malice, allowed the criminal case to proceed directly. Officer Richard Kowalski was arrested in the courthouse, his badge confiscated and charged with attempted murder, deprivation of rights under color of law, and fraud for his false reports. The collapse of the Blue Wall was a public spectacle. The police commissioner was forced to resign. The department was forced into a federal consent decree, mandating sweeping reforms in use of force and anti-bias training. Kowalski was eventually convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Elijah's recovery was a long and painful journey, but he walked it with a courage that humbled me. The financial settlement meant he never had to worry about money again. He finished his degree at Columbia, not in engineering, but in pre-law. "I want to stand beside you, Marcus," he told me. "I want to be a shield for other kids like me." We didn't move to a mansion. We bought a beautiful brownstone in a nice part of Harlem, a home with a garden and enough space for both of us. The midnight blue Mercedes was sold. Elijah said he never wanted to see it again. We used a significant portion of the settlement to start the Johnson Brothers Foundation, dedicated to providing legal aid to victims of police brutality and funding programs for at-risk youth in our community. The victory was not in the money. It was in the restoration of Elijah's spirit. It was in the way he could finally walk down the street without a flinch, his head held high, knowing that his name had been cleared, that his truth had prevailed. It was in the quiet evenings in our new home, where we would cook together, the ghost of our mother's recipes guiding our hands. One evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the neighborhood kids play, Elijah turned to me. His body was scarred, but his eyes were clear and full of light. "Marcus," he said softly, "you saved me, twice. First when we were kids and then from them. You fought the whole world for me." I put my arm around him, the way our father used to. "I told you I always would, Eli. I made a promise. A brother isn't just a relative. He's a keeper, a guardian." "I was just keeping my promise." "A guardian." "I was just keeping my promise." The system hadn't changed out of kindness. It had been forced to change because we refused to be silent, because we fought with the very laws they had written, because we used truth as our weapon. We had taken their injustice and alchemized it into a force for protection, ensuring that our story would become a shield for others. The light of justice, though delayed, had finally pierced the shadow, and we would spend the rest of our lives making sure it shone for everyone. If you believe that love is stronger than hate and that truth can topple any lie, then this is your call to action. Do not ever let injustice silence you. Arm yourself with knowledge. Document the truth and fight with every legal tool at your disposal. Your voice, your resolve can be the catalyst for change. Stand up, speak out, and be the shield for those who cannot protect themselves.